Here we go. We're going to talk about James chapter 3. Are you ready for this?
We are ready for this.
I don't know
ready
if
for this.
You're ready?
Are you ready?
I don't know. I've got to prepare my tongue.
Prepare your tongue, yes. Make sure you control your tongue, Jeanie.
Control my tongue. This is what this chapter's about.
That's what it's about.
Yeah, well, half of it.
Half
is
of it about taming the tongue.
when you open your mouth. My Bible here, the message says that. That's how the chapter starts off. When you open your mouth,
Yes.
be careful of what you say.
Mm-hmm.
But it starts off here with this statement here, which says to you why you shouldn't necessarily read the Bible so literally, because it says, don't be in any rush to become a teacher, my friends. If I was, at high school reading that, I'd be like, is that God telling me not to become a teacher?
Okay, taking it literally.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, I think it's not just that. I think even in church life, it could be an excuse for not wanting to grow in the gift of teaching as well. I don't want
Exactly.
He's counteracting pride and all the things that he's.
Who's he talking to here?
I think he's talking to the same group. He says, "Dear brothers and sisters," so he's talking to a bunch of Jewish people,
and I guess people might be wanting to be teachers. This is teaching what? It's not teaching maths.
No, this is teaching the word of God, teaching, influencing in the church, teaching people how to live the Christian faith.
Okay, so it's basically saying if you want to be an influencer, just be careful because it's highly responsible work and teacher influencers are held to the strictest standards.
Excellent. So that now has gone, you've applied it beyond just teaching in the church to the value of people in positions of influence or power, which a teacher has, which social media influencer has, which a politician has, which a school principal has, which an employer has. In all of those situations, there is a very real responsibility that goes with those positions where you hold other people's lives. You hold a degree of power over other people's lives and you can influence them for good or ill. Maybe that's what James is saying. Don't be in a rush to do that, to seek power, because you're going to be judged more strictly.
And we see this now in our culture a lot more than we ever have before. These verses from 1 down to 12, which is about influence of power there and about what we say.
Yes, the power of our words.
Yeah, we've never been held more accountable than now with what we say.
Yeah, back in that day, you could say a few things that maybe upset the village and the town and the community around you might ostracize you. But now what you say is out there.
Yes.
For all and sundry across the planet. And
should we just stop recording this now?
Isn't that challenging?
Yeah, it is challenging.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so the power of our influence, for good or ill, is now magnified. It's like the tongue, it was the power of words, but I wonder if the power, we talked about this last episode or the episode before, the power of the thumbs.
The thumbs, yes.
The power of the thumbs, the power of the keyboard magnifies the power of the tongue so much more widely. And I would also add in there, what's also more dangerous is the level of anonymity that the keyboard or you can
keyboard warriors,
because now you can do it behind an alias. You can pick a different name. People will say things that they would never say to someone's face.
That's the internet for you, isn't it?
That's the power of the internet. So now we've got another problem on another degree again. And sociologists, and it's like, there's been all kinds of studies done about this, that the risk, the risk of damage and harm that can be done is so much more exaggerated because of the power of anonymity. People will say things on a social media account, even to their friends, it's been shown. Even people on Facebook who are in their friends circle, they will say things that they will not say to that person's face because of that distance gives people some sense of misrepresented power or isolation, which all that to say that the power of the tongue for James here is bad enough. Like he says, a spark can start a huge fire. Well, a spark can burn down the planet is what you would say, in today's world. It's on steroids.
Yeah, we're in this culture right now where we have this taming of the tongue on one side, yet we have this explosion in the belief of freedom of speech.
Yeah, that's right. That
as
comes
well.
too. Yep.
But then that's also people trying to tame that down. We live in a strange
complex
world.
Time.
We have to be careful with what we say, yet we should say whatever we want And if we're anonymous online, then therefore we have more right to say that, or we have more opportunity to say whatever we want.
Well, let's read what James says in chapter 3 about the tongue and see how that, because this is very pertinent and does apply to us.
He says, a bit in the mouth of a horse controls the whole horse. Now, if you don't know what that is, it's a bit of metal that goes in the mouth that can turn the horse left or right, or it can slow them down. Or if you've been watching any Olympics, the dressage stuff they do, there's a lot of that with the bit and the feet. And a small rudder on a huge ship in the hands of a skilled captain sets a course in the face of the strongest winds. A word out of your mouth may seem of no account, but it can accomplish nearly anything or destroy it. It only takes a spark, remember, to set off a forest fire. A careless or wrongly placed word out of your mouth can do that. By our speech, we can ruin the world, turn harmony to chaos, throw mud on reputation, send the whole world up in smoke and go up in smoke with it. Smoke right from the pit of hell. This is scary, it says. That's pretty obvious. You can tame a tiger, but you can't tame a tongue. It's never been done. The tongue runs wild. With our tongues we bless God our Father. With the same tongues we curse the very men and women he made in his image. Cursings and blessings out of the same mouth. My friends, this can't go on. That's how he says. Just can't go on. It has to stop.
It has to stop.
So we have to be of one mind.
Yep. So there is really practical Christian faith. Take Christianity out of it. That's just good, practical, common sense stuff for life.
This is like our Proverbs.
This is like our Christian Proverbs. It's exactly right. It's like you could talk to anyone in the world and they could understand that. Whether they're a Christian or not, they would go, yeah, if I could live that way, or if I do the opposite of what he's advocating for, it's destructive. Especially the way Eugene's done it. Obviously, he's largely brought it up into the 21st century with the way you've read it there. But it's just so practical. The power that I have for good or ill by what comes out of my mouth, by what comes off my fingers as I type. The power.
But people, when they type with their thumbs, they're actually wanting to start the fire.
Yes, because of this whole thing he's saying, it's like a restless evil inside of us. It's this sense of you mentioned how the tension between freedom of speech and being able to tame it. Those two things are held in tension. We're not advocating here for you shouldn't have a voice. You should be kept quiet. He's not advocating for just always shut up and let other people control you, but he's advocating for use your freedom in a way that brings life to others. So yeah, the sinful nature says, I want to be heard. I want to be justified. You hurt me, I will hurt you back. Christ-like attitude says, I need to make sure that what comes out of my mouth is useful for building others up.
Yeah. Well, he pretty much says exactly what he means here.
Yeah.
Cursings and blessings from the same mouth. Like you can't praise God and then turn around and curse the person sitting next to you in church. It just doesn't fit.
Or I would argue you
together.
can't even praise God in church, then turn around and curse the people who are anti-church online.
Oh, that's true.
Because it's coming out of the same thing. So it's duplicitous is the word. Have two sides. And he says it, I don't know if you read it there, but he says it in the other version. It says it's to do that is like salt water and fresh water coming out of the same spring. And I haven't got the exact stats in front of me.
Fresh water and brackish.
Brackish water. Okay, so I've got the exact stats in front of me, but it's like there's a certain point at which fresh water ceases to be fresh water and becomes salt water. And it's not like 50-50. 50-50 is salt water. So the saltiest ocean in the world, the Dead Sea, is like 20% salt. But you only need a very small fraction of saltiness in water to make water unfresh for human consumption. So you might be praising God with 90% of your time and cursing with 10% of your time. That's salt water. That's not fresh.
I get that.
To understand what he's saying here.
Yep.
We don't need much saltiness to make our whole life salty before God.
Great. This is you're just really making me feel bad because I'll leave here and I'll be like, I had this great podcast. Well, went really well.
And blame someone.
No, I just have to get in the car and someone has to, I don't know, annoy me.
Yes, exactly. It's sobering stuff. It's sobering stuff.
I'm so very quick to curse anybody who cuts me off in a car.
Yep.
That's for sure.
That's something to work on, Jeanie.
But I can cut them off. No.
Yeah, that's the point. Let's just allow that to do its work on us, is what James is trying to say here. The power of life and death, Proverbs says, is in the tongue.
Oh, woe is me. Much to work on.
Thank you for your grace, Lord. That we don't have to be perfect. We just need to continually be working towards it with your grace.
That's true, yes. But this is something we really need to be mindful of, and it's something you learn as a young child, I think, in the playground, and certainly as a teenager. When you're becoming friends with somebody, you hear they're gossiping behind your back. You know, there's this whole world of gossip that goes on, and then they front up and they're friendly to you.
Oh, yeah.
Those relationships don't go very far.
No, they don't, because you know there's poison behind the scenes.
Yeah, and you really question the character.
Yeah.
Silver-tongued.
Silver-tongued, yes,
yeah.
that's the term, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. This is not a unique value. Most people in the world get this teaching. But this is a kingdom value because it goes in the face of human sin, which says, well, they're gossiping about behind my back. I'm going to get back at them, which is the opposite. But once again, I've said it a few times in this episode this week, do not overcome evil with evil, overcome evil with good.
You just said it here before, talking about the grace of God. These verses here just show me the grace of God, because it is, I would say, impossible to not curse and bless in your lifetime. Yep. And God, knowing that, is still interested in having a relationship with you, because he knows I'm going to go out there and say something.
That's right. And he
privately
still loves
in
us,
the car.
And he's still gracious.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. Now so we don't use, Paul says, therefore we don't have the attitude, I think it's in Corinthians, he says, therefore we say, well, if grace abounds, where sin abounds, grace abounds all the more. So therefore, that's a license for me to keep on sinning because there's more grace there. He says, is that how we should be? And he says, absolutely not. So it's true that our grace is there to cover us when we fail, which we will do, but that's not then permission for us to not to seek to live and build upon God's values because, we're covered anyway. It doesn't matter if I sin because therefore. No, it's actually God's grace enabling us to become more like him over time. So hopefully there's still salt water in my heart, but hopefully when Rohan compares his heart in 2024 with his heart in 2014, hopefully there's less salt than there was in 2014. I should be more fresh, less salty than I was back then. And that's the process of sanctification, of becoming like Christ.
It's a wise teaching, this one, isn't it?
Sure is.
Yeah, it's calling you to be accountable. Be careful with what you say.
Yeah, and applying it. And I think we as Christians need to apply this. I think more than anything, I think we need to apply this to the areas I see in pastoral ministry that come up is gossip, where we get people on our side against others in order to feel good. So gossip and in the area of social media are the two big areas that I often see. I look at and think, oh, guys, you're letting the team down.
Social media, you mean by posting comments that might hurt someone?
That hurt, not thinking through the implications of the power of those comments to start a fire.
Okay, you don't mean
almost like you're trying to start a fire.
Okay, so you're not saying churches shouldn't use social media or people shouldn't be on social media. You're saying
using it wisely.
Using it wisely.
Yeah, using it. Don't fall into the trap of thinking that the first thing that you want to say on there is going to get the result that you think it's going to get. Weigh it up. If you want to say something on there, send it to someone you trust who might be a bit more measured or have a different perspective and say, hey, what do you think? That kind of thing, before we just jump on there. I think it's like gossip behind people's backs, even though it's out there in the public. But we're gossiping. We're spreading angst. We're spreading anger and hatred.
That's right.
And I think those things are the opposite of the kingdom of God.
There's nothing that'll like ruining your night before you go to bed than going through social media.
Seeing the level of
hate,
vitriol that people throw at each other.
Disgust, Yes. And it's designed to make you angry.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. That's what gets clicks.
Clicks.
So if we can, as Christians, we need a good theology of social media, to be honest. And you do well to root it in James 3. Come back to this passage about the power of the tongue. Start there. Maybe compare what you write. Go back through some previous posts and compare them with James 3 and say, how do they line up next to each other? Send it to a friend and say, hey, where do you think I line up here and see if you're in line with that or not.
And it's not lost on me doing this podcast. Like, I have to be careful with what I say. And sometimes I'm and I don't know what I'm talking about. But it's actually hard to speak on here because you think, hopefully nobody's hurt by what we're saying.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
There's a responsibility that comes with recording a podcast because sometimes we don't know what we don't know and we might hurt someone.
Add to that, in 20 years' time, things might be changed. And
that's right.
Look, hopefully we are actually still popping up. We're not just down
down the bottom of the list by then.
Chances are that's going to happen anyway.
Yeah, that's right.
But we have to be careful with everything.
That's right. You got it.
Yes.
So that's the tongue.
The tongue, and it leads on to living well and living wisely.
Yeah, that's the last part of this chapter.
And do you want to be counted wise to build a reputation for wisdom? Here's what you do. Live well, live wisely, live humbly.
Good.
It's the way you live, not the way you talk, that counts.
So walk the walk, not just talk the talk.
Okay, so it was saying talking counts, but the way I live counts more.
Yeah. Oh, well, the way we talk is important, but hopefully our talk matches our walk. So, I think he's here saying it's not just enough to appear a certain way. You need to make sure that your heart and your actions back that up. So he's going to contrast here the wisdom of God with the wisdom of this world. And the wisdom of the world, he will say, is selfishness, is unspiritual, is demonic. It's jealous, it's boasting, it's lying, it's ambition of the heart. I'm reading the list, but I'm reading it backwards. But these are all the things that he says are wisdom of the world. And he contrasts that with what you just said, the wisdom of humility, of doing good works with humility. That's the wisdom of God.
Real wisdom, in verse 17, God's wisdom begins with a holy life and is characterized by getting along with others. It is gentle and reasonable, overflowing with mercy and blessings. Not hot one day and cold the next, not two-faced. You can develop a healthy, robust community that lives right with God and enjoy its results only if you do the hard work of getting along with each other, treating each other with dignity and honour.
Oh, that's well put.
It is well put. It's a nice...
Sounds a lot like Galatians 5, the fruit of the Spirit to me.
Oh, I was going to ask you what we talked about before, how a lot of James links back to the Sermon on the Mount. Can you see anything in here on the Sermon on the Mount?
On this bit?
Yeah.
I'm betting there's some Beatitudes stuff in here. Can you?
No, I was asking you.
I haven't got the list in front of me. The scholars have got
or
lists
in the
of where
other
it
one.
all links back. Oh, I think the way we speak would be very much a part of Jesus, where he'll say things like things like in his teaching around out of the heart the mouth speaks. So Jesus was really big on that aspect of what comes out of your mouth is what's inside your heart. He rebukes the Pharisees for it. So I think there's that aspect of it in terms of what's coming out of your mouth should be indicative of what's going on in your heart. Well, it actually is what he's saying, because he says you wash the outside of the cup and dishes and all this sort of stuff, but inside you're full of filth and greediness, and that's what's coming out of you. So I should be able to look at the way you speak, and it will be a window into what's going on inside your heart. And that fits with what Jesus says, whether that's the Sermon on the Mount specifically, but it's in his teaching.
Do you think James is here he's putting a lot of emphasis on wisdom because Solomon did? And what is the wisdom that Solomon wants? When God says, what do you want from me? You can have anything you want.
He wants wisdom to govern well, to represent God well.
That's what it is?
Yeah, because he says that. He says, here I am, a young boy, relatively speaking, in front of a great people that you've given me. Give me wisdom that I might represent you well and govern well. So that's
Is that
wisdom.
the wisdom we should be asking for?
I think so too, yeah.
And that, in one way of doing that, is doing the hard work of getting along with each other and treating each other with dignity and honour.
Yeah, that's right. That's others focused as opposed to myself, and that's good wisdom, isn't it?
Yeah, but isn't that what Solomon wanted? Other focused.
Yes,
wisdom?
When he was at his best, that's what he wanted.
Yeah.
he fell for the power and the glory and the accolades and the money and all that sort of stuff. He fell for that at one stage in his life, but early as a young believer, that's a young king. That's definitely what he wanted.
But if he is indeed the author of Proverbs, and he's writing all those little short ethical statements, James is doing the same thing.
James is doing the same thing. Yes, he's mimicking short, pithy wisdom statements. Yeah.
treat each other with dignity. So what do you have any examples of when Jesus did this?
When he treated people with dignity?
When he got along with each other, he was gentle and reasonable, overflowing with blessings. And because James doesn't give any examples of Jesus here. In fact, he only mentions Jesus twice, I think we said in the introduction.
I think Jesus constantly lived that way. He always elevated the marginalised, the ones that were looked down on. So the woman who is caught in the act of adultery, he treats her with dignity. The woman in our last podcast that you and I recorded, John 4, the woman at the well, he treated her with dignity to address her privately.
And he had wisdom in that moment too, didn't he?
Yeah.
And he wanted to grow her wisdom too in that conversation.
Yep, that's right. So he was others focused.
Because he wanted her to live well, live wisely, and live humbly.
Yeah, I like it. This is Jesus always seeking to live a way that elevates others, that produces that's a fruitful life that manifests love. I mean, it lists here love, gentleness, and peace in verse 17. Well, that's 3 of 9 gifts fruit of the Spirit right there. So these are kingdom values that wise people will live out, and Jesus always sought to live that way, and it's incumbent. He's teaching in the Sermon on the Mount makes it clear that he expects it's not just a suggestion, he expects that his followers will live that way.
Is that what the church was designed to do? To live, to elevate others? Do we do that?
I hope so.
I hope so. Yeah, I think we have.
I don't think we do. Definitely historically we have done it really well at times, and then at other times we haven't done it so well. So it's not that we then pat ourselves on the back and go, well, it doesn't matter when we're not doing it. But just like our own lives, as a church, we should be seeking to go, where can we do better? Where do we need to tame the church's tongue?
Yeah, I was just going to say that. Yeah.
All totally. Of those things.
Yeah, and thinking about the church in the other chapters too, the favoritism and treating the poor and the kind, like the church has got a long way to go in all of these areas.
That's right. And that's not to say that we haven't done those things well. We live in a world today that values these things precisely because the church has influenced for good.
Well, it was the Gospels, believing in the Gospels, believing in Christ that started hospitals, that started charities.
So there's all kinds
Christians
of good things
give
there.
Millions of dollars to charity every year.
But
all
that's not a
things.
case to rest on our laurels and go, therefore we've nailed it. No, we need to be constantly assessing ourselves as a local church, as individuals, as a collective movement of churches, as the church in our nation. We should be assessing ourselves and going, where are we doing this well and where are we forgetting what we look like?
Yeah, going back to talking about looking in the mirror, which you did a couple of chapters ago, would we do well as believers and would we do well as the church to constantly be checking ourselves, looking in the mirror and trying to see those areas where we need to improve on?
Yep. I think that's what James wants us to do.
Yeah, apply a little bit of lipstick here.
Yeah, where do I need not to cover up, but to genuinely be transformed by the word?
Well, you are transformed when you put lipstick on.
Well, temporarily, but I think the power of the word is that it can bring lasting change. It's not just putting a bit of lippy on, it's actually changing us, making us genuinely look more like Christ.
And this is what that book is doing, isn't it? Encouraging us to be genuinely changed.
Yep. Which is why this book is so dense, because there are so many things that we could look at, any number of things in this we could look at and read the whole chapter reading it. Maybe take half an hour to read the whole book, but it will take a lifetime to master these things.
I think you should preach for an entire year just off this book.
Well, that's not going to be 2025, maybe another year.
Just one sentence a week.
One sentence a week. All right, that will keep Adrian happy.
Yeah.
He said, 7.5 years in the Gospel of Matthew, a sentence a week or something?
Yeah.
He was talking about. But no, maybe 2025, we'll see. But yes, there is a very practical book for Christian living.
I've got no further questions
for
that
well, that's
chapter.
it for today's episode.
Yes, it is.
Tomorrow will be James chapter 4. We'll talk to you then. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Bible. Wait, what? Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast so you don't miss a single episode. And you can also find us on all the socials. Just search The Bible. Wait, what? And to find out more about our church, just search C3 Camden, C3 Picton, or C3 Thirroul on the web or on the socials. Thanks for being with us today, and we look forward to talking to you on the next episode of The Bible. Wait, what?